Before evil ever took shape, long before the first humans walked upon the earth, a perfect goodness reigned in the heavens. Everything was flawless. Every angel radiated an immense divine light and lived in deep reverence for their Father, the Creator of all. But among them all, one stood out, surpassing the rest: Lucifer. You were the seal of perfection, brimming with wisdom and unmatched in beauty. Lucifer was the most intelligent, the most powerful, and the most revered in all of heaven. Everyone admired him. He was God's crowning creation, his masterpiece, the first being God ever sculpted with his mighty hand. God took great delight in shaping Lucifer, the morning star. He granted him power like no other angel, a brilliance second only to God himself. But even in perfection, something shifted. Lucifer, once blameless, harbored a growing darkness. It was within him that wickedness first took root, and with that, he became the very source of evil and suffering in the world. He transformed into the Prince of Darkness, the corrupter of souls, the Lord of destruction, Satan himself. Lucifer's fall left a wound in heaven that would never fully heal. Though the light returned, it was forever dimmed, like a mirror shattered into pieces. Paradise would forever remember the betrayal. Lucifer's story stands as a stark warning. Even the brightest star can fall into darkness. But how did we arrive at this point? What caused this irreversible shift? How did a realm of peace give birth to the seed of evil? This is the story of how heaven, once perfect, became the stage for rebellion. Before the tragedy, Lucifer was a being created to embody perfection. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, positioned on the holy mount of God, walking among the fiery stones. Heaven itself is a realm of flawless order, a divine structure where each angel holds a specific mission and purpose to fulfill. At the highest level, the seraphim burn like living flames, radiant with love and purity, ceaselessly singing, "Holy, holy is the Lord Almighty." Next are the cherubim, guardians of divine wisdom and protectors of the universe's most sacred secrets. They are the shield that wards off any shadow of impurity. Below them are the archangels and angels. Archangels, like Michael and Gabriel, are the messengers of monumental moments, warriors who bear the divine word on their swords. The angels closest to humanity are the guardians of souls, walking with us on our journey, ensuring that evil cannot approach. In this perfect order, God sought to create something extraordinary. From his boundless wisdom and love, he created Lucifer, the morning star. You were the seal of perfection, brimming with wisdom and unmatched in beauty. Lucifer was not just beautiful, he was the leader, the guiding light that other angels followed. His charisma was magnetic, and his presence inspired deep respect and devotion. He moved among the angels with unparalleled grace, and even Michael, the great warrior, marveled at his wisdom. Lucifer organized the heavenly choirs, directing praises to the Creator with fervor and passion. His voice was like a flame cutting through the darkness, a radiance that led them in their songs and prayers. God had not created evil, but something perfect. Yet Lucifer, blinded by his own brilliance, allowed pride to grow in his heart. His desire for glory consumed him like a hidden fire, slowly but surely destroying him. The Bible reveals how his fall began. Your heart became proud because of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom due to your splendor. What was once his greatest gift became the very thing that led to his downfall. The beauty that everyone adored turned into the source of his destruction, and the wisdom that once inspired others became the weapon of his self-destruction. Pride consumed him. He sought to rise above his station, to place his throne higher than God's stars. In his heart he declared, "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God." Then the heavens trembled, rebellion erupted, and peace shattered like delicate glass. Jesus, in a chilling testament, declared, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." In an instant, Lucifer was cast into the abyss, banished from the light that once surrounded him. His glory faded, and his splendor was swallowed by darkness. The morning star was cut down, the brilliant celestial body snuffed out. But how could this happen? Lucifer, despite his immense influence, is rarely mentioned in the Holy Scriptures. Why does a being with such monumental impact appear so infrequently in sacred texts? To understand Lucifer's great celestial rebellion, we must look deeper into Scripture. His character remains an enigma, spoken of only in fragments. The Bible mentions his story in scattered passages, often veiled in symbolic language. This video draws primarily from the Bible, but also incorporates additional sources, including The History of the Angelic World by Father José Antonio Fortea, and writings from St. Augustine. In these texts, Lucifer embodies the desire to rise above his creator. Augustine explains that Lucifer, blinded by his own brilliance, sought to equal God and was ultimately exiled, leaving behind an eternal lesson for all of creation. Now let's witness how Lucifer's soul began to unravel. His descent into darkness started with a faint, almost imperceptible spark of thought. Lucifer wondered to himself, "What if my light could shine even brighter? What if my glory no longer needed to serve another?" These were small, fleeting questions, almost invisible at first, but like seeds, they took root and slowly grew in the silence of his mind. He began to envision himself on high, seated upon a throne, receiving praise. With each duty he performed, that inner voice grew louder. Meanwhile, heaven remained in perfect harmony, yet something within Lucifer shifted, becoming more distant with each passing day. The angels began to notice his change. He became introspective, cryptic. One day Gabriel approached him saying, "Lucifer, brother, what burden weighs on your heart? Your light grows restless." Lucifer looked at him, his gaze distant, and replied, "There are things even we cannot understand, dear Gabriel." Gabriel felt a chill, an unsettling unease, but Lucifer quickly turned away, avoiding any further words that might reveal the storm brewing within. Day by day, Lucifer began to neglect his duties. His once commanding voice, the leader of the heavenly choir, grew silent. The other angels felt his absence, as if a star had gone missing from the firmament. In praise gatherings where he once stood first, he now attended half-heartedly, gazing upward with a mix of pride and resentment. Heaven had clear rules, but no chains. God had granted each angel the freedom to love and serve in their perfection, and the gift of free will. As Lucifer wrestled between light and shadow, the angels around him began to sense something unusual, the tension of his inner struggle. Some, dazzled by his greatness, began to listen to his words with new ears, following him in silence as if his light could lead them to a different destiny. One of the cherubim, noticing his change, approached him and asked, "Lucifer, do you no longer find joy in singing?" Lucifer, with a cold smile, simply replied, "Perhaps I've found new pursuits. I found other pursuits. Perhaps there's something beyond what we've known." With these words, the morning star made his decision. The spark inside him ignited into a raging flame. "I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." That night his radiance changed. No longer was it the light of praise, but the blazing fire of ambition. Paradise, so perfect, so full of peace, felt the first tremor of rebellion. His name, meaning light bringer, was no empty title. He had been heaven's beacon, the morning star that rose first, illuminating the darkness of creation. Every angel listened to his words with deep devotion. Lucifer spoke of God like no one else had. Angels were not naive souls, they were wise, strong, each a reflection of God's purity. Yet Lucifer drew them in, not with feeble love, lies, or empty promises, but with his charisma and unwavering authority. He didn't seek to deceive them like a liar. Instead, he spoke with passion and vision, so compelling that many followed him, seeing in him a new light, like a shooting star briefly illuminating the sky. Lucifer gave the impression of being a brilliant, unique leader, worthy of following. His goodness, authority, respect, and influence were well-earned. If we truly understood how this masterpiece of God was crafted, we would understand why God himself praised his creation in the book of Job. Even in his sin, Lucifer remained strong, a force of undeniable power. Even in rebellion, the beauty of God's creation had not been destroyed. The divine warning came. God called Lucifer alone, amidst the sacred silence, his voice flowing like a deep river, filled with love and patience. Lucifer, my son, the seal of perfection, I sense your thoughts drifting away from me. In your heart, ideas are growing that pull you further from the eternal. Lucifer, with a serene glow, looked at the Creator and replied, Father, didn't you create me to understand and explore? There's nothing I desire more than to comprehend the depth of your work. Do you think that's wrong? God's sadness was profound yet contained. His heart, immense and patient, understood the fragility of the freedom he had given. He knew that even in the purest of souls, seeds of pride could grow. Lucifer, God continued gently, your desire to understand is noble, but your thoughts are becoming self-centered. You've been seduced by the light I placed within you. You forget that this light is a reflection of my love, not your own. Lucifer lowered his gaze, but inside him, a fire of confusion and pride began to burn. My Lord, I have wanted nothing that isn't yours. My light is the gift you gave me. How could I turn away from you if I was made by your own will? God, with eyes of infinite tenderness, looked at him. He understood that deep down, Lucifer was beginning to see the beauty of his own glory as an end in itself. He hadn't yet sinned, but his love for the Creator was cooling. With mercy, God extended his hand toward Lucifer. Son, remember where all light comes from. Don't let your heart be cloaked in shadows. If you turn to me, your splendor will grow in truth. Together we will be even greater than any solitary thought. But instead of feeling peace, Lucifer felt a sting to his pride, a discomfort he could barely comprehend. But it was there. Didn't God trust his ability to remain faithful? Why so many warnings? With a bow, Lucifer withdrew, but inside an invisible distance began to grow. As the days passed, his desire to understand and explore consumed him. He no longer paused to contemplate God with the same devotion. The angels still worshipped him, and his voice still led the choirs, but his heart had become divided. Once again, God called to him, Lucifer, I have seen the path you're taking, and it pains me to see you like this. Your light is fading, turning to shadow. There is still time, my son. If you return, the love within you will bloom anew. But this time, Lucifer refused to listen. His heart had grown hard, fixated solely on self-satisfaction and personal glory. In his mind, he began to justify his thoughts. Don't I deserve more? God, in his infinite patience, let him go. He knew he had already poured out all the love and mercy possible, yet Lucifer chose a path of his own. I will not turn away from you, God said in a final warning, but you are free to choose. Lucifer was granted a second chance. God's sorrow was immense, a deep, ancient sadness. He knew he would lose his most beautiful creation. His mercy was infinite, but Lucifer's choice had to be respected. Even in his fall, I will love him, the Creator thought as Lucifer drifted away. All of heaven seemed to hold its breath, knowing that soon a great revelation would come to heaven. testing every celestial being, especially Lucifer. God, in his infinite wisdom, delayed that moment. He wanted to give Lucifer time to prepare, time to grow in humility, and to strengthen the loyalty in his heart. With love and concern, he spoke to Lucifer. "My son," he said tenderly, "a great revelation approaches, and when it comes, the wind will be strong, the tensions in your heart will be intense, like a storm tearing through the sky. You must prepare yourself, root yourself in obedience, for the test will be great." Lucifer listened, genuinely. He knelt before God, gazing at him with devotion. His voice, soft yet firm, arose from the depths of his being. "Father, whatever the test may be, I desire to obey your commands. I cannot promise I'll be perfectly faithful, but I swear my desire is to be loyal. My heart still burns with your love." These words were not lies. Lucifer spoke from the depths of his heart, and in his soul burned a genuine desire to remain loyal. Yet at the same time, in a dark corner of his mind, the seed of pride continued to grow. He felt that he, among all angels, was special, unique. "Am I not the one who shines most brightly?" he thought silently. God, in his patience, gave him another chance. Once again, he postponed the revelation, allowing Lucifer more time, more space to draw near and seek humility in his heart. "Lucifer, this test will not be easy. Even when it seems the wind carries you away, you must remember your origin, your essence. You must remember that all light comes from me." Lucifer's temptation was much like the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, an earthly paradise reflecting heaven's harmony. God had given them everything, a place of peace and love. But in the midst of the garden stood the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a reminder of their freedom, their ability to choose. The serpent whispered to Eve, "You will be like God, knowing good and evil." This was the same mistake Lucifer made. In that whisper was born the desire to be something more, to not depend completely on God. The morning star, the son of dawn, had turned his back on the light that had given him life, choosing instead to walk toward the shadow. Free will, God's most precious gift, proved to be the most vulnerable point in Eden and in heaven. Pride opened the door to downfall, and perfect peace was shattered. The virtues that had been the pillars of angels became fragile, and heaven knew shadow for the first time. The great revelation and the ultimate test, God, in his infinite patience, had delayed the moment of testing time and time again. Speaking to Lucifer from the depths of his heart, he said, "My son," repeatedly, "the time of revelation approaches. You must prepare yourself." It was a fatherly warning, a loving call for humility. God, who had loved Lucifer so deeply, still believed that Lucifer could change, that love could overcome the pride beginning to cloud his light. But the moment came when the waiting had to end. God could no longer delay. He had to consider all celestial beings, not just Lucifer. All of heaven felt the growing tension in the air, a deep, expectant silence that covered every angel. And on that day, God gathered his heavenly hosts, angels great and small, into an assembly that illuminated the entire firmament. A solemn silence fell. All of heaven held its breath. The firmament opened, and God's presence shone with infinite majesty. Then, like soft thunder, his voice filled the cosmos. "I will create a material universe," the Creator announced, "a place where life will flourish, a place that will reflect my love and glory in a new way." Before the angels, he unveiled the vision of what would be: stars, galaxies, planets spinning in perfect order. And on one of these worlds, Earth, a place where life would flourish in its greatest splendor. The angels watched in awe, fascinated by what they saw. In their hearts, joy swelled as they beheld the Creator's plan. Everything was new, like a dream they had never dared to imagine. But then God continued, and his words grew even more mysterious. I will not only create this universe. On that world, I will create beings in my image and likeness. They will be called humans. They will be of flesh and spirit, a blend of heaven and earth. And more, in that same place, I myself will become flesh. The second person of the Trinity, my Son, will take human form. His name will be Jesus Christ, and in that humanity you shall worship me. The silence in heaven became deafening. God the Eternal was asking the angels to worship him in the human form of Jesus Christ. He asked them to bend their knees, not just to divine majesty, but to a human face, fragile and humble. The angels erupted in awe and jubilation. Witnessing the light of light become flesh was an act so beautiful, so sublime, that many could hardly contain their joy. It was God's plan in its most unexpected form, a display of the deepest, most incomprehensible love. They acclaimed the Creator, feeling honored to witness such a profound mystery. But the mystery of the Incarnation was not all. God also revealed that humanity would eventually become corrupted, and he would sacrifice himself for them through crucifixion. Yet among them, one of the brightest remained motionless. Lucifer didn't move, speak, or cheer. He watched with a distant expression, as if the light surrounding him couldn't penetrate his heart. His gaze was like a dark well, and his face reflected the internal storm raging within him. Lucifer defies God. In that moment, everything inside him crumbled. The idea of bowing to a human form, worshiping God in the humility of mortal flesh, seemed incomprehensible, unacceptable to him. Why, he thought, why would perfection itself need to lower itself? Why are we beings of light asked to worship a being of flesh? He heard that God would create humans and that they would eventually corrupt themselves. Yet knowing this, God would still sacrifice himself for them. The vision of the crucifixion was something terrifying to Lucifer. This was the moment that made him explode. These finite, ungrateful beings would not only rebel, but they would kill him. Lucifer was stunned. Could it be any more absurd, he thought? He watched God's plan unfold with disbelief and disdain. The mystery of the Incarnation, the revelation that the Creator would take human form in Jesus Christ, unleashed a storm within him. And from that storm, a burning question emerged. Why not me? For centuries, Lucifer had been the most beautiful, the closest to the throne, the Creator's masterpiece. Why hadn't he been chosen for the hypostatic union? He felt his light, his splendor, his wisdom made him worthy of something greater. But instead of elevating him, God chose to lower himself to human flesh. From this thought, bitterness was born, a bitterness that coiled around his heart like a serpent, suffocating every trace of love and respect he once had for the Father. Finally, the decisive moment arrived. God stood there, surrounded by a multitude of angels. One by one, his brothers knelt in adoration, accepting the revelation of the Incarnation. But Lucifer remained standing, his body rigid, his gaze fixed on God's throne. His heart burned with silent hatred. Slowly, he opened his lips and, in a tone devoid of emotion, uttered a simple word, one that echoed like thunder in heaven's silence. No. God looked at him with a mixture of sadness and love, but Lucifer felt nothing but disdain. He took a deep breath and repeated it, this time with force, one that shook the very air. No. His voice rose cold and defiant, like that of a king pronouncing judgment. The angels present trembled, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. How could the purest, most beautiful angel defy the Creator himself? How dared he disobey? Lucifer then turned his gaze to the multitude of angels. With terrifying calm, he began to address them. Don't you see? This is a mistake. Can't you see that what God asks of us is absurd?" His voice, filled with dark wisdom, filled the celestial space. He asks us to worship in inferior form, to bend our knees before mortal flesh. This isn't glory, it's humiliation. Each word, laden with intelligence and persuasion, embedded itself in the angels' hearts, sowing doubt, disturbing the peace that had once filled them. "God asks the unacceptable of us," he continued with icy passion. "We are not the ones who must accept this nonsense. It is God who has failed. He has taken a wrong path. Why should we bow to something beneath us? We, who were made of pure light, should occupy a higher place, not lower ourselves." The angels listened, bewildered. His words seemed so logical, so full of reason, and in some the seed of rebellion began to germinate. Lucifer, with the charisma that had always been his gift, looked at them one by one, his face reflecting cold determination. Lucifer, first among angels, had fallen. The intervention of Archangel Michael was inevitable. The angels, filled with doubt, listened closely to Lucifer's words. Whispers of rebellion and reason echoed in their hearts, his speech carrying a seductive logic, a convincing force that penetrated like a subtle poison. Is God asking the impossible of us? Is it fair that we must bow before a human form, something so low? These were thoughts that some angels barely dared to voice, and yet there they were, growing like shadows in their souls of light. As Lucifer spoke, his words flowed with the charisma and authority he had always possessed. It was impossible not to listen. His speech was firm, direct, and every phrase resonated with a blend of wisdom and defiance. But suddenly, in the midst of his discourse, a voice rose with such force that it shook the entire heavens, a cry overflowing with conviction and simplicity. "Who is like God?" The voice belonged to Michael, the smaller archangel. Though of lesser rank, his purity shone with incomparable strength. His exclamation pierced through the angels like a sword. In just 3 words, Michael had answered all of Lucifer's arguments, pointing out the fundamental flaw in his logic. Who is like God? It was a cry of humility, a cry of absolute recognition that no one, not even the morning star, could rival the Creator. The angels trembled. Michael's words, so simple and direct, awakened something within them, reminding them of who they were, where they came from, and to whom they owed their existence. Lucifer, upon hearing that cry, turned to face Michael. His gaze was filled with icy fury, but also surprise. No one until now had dared to challenge him so openly. Michael stepped forward, small in comparison, but full of courage. "You are arrogant," Michael said. His words were as thunderous as lightning. His voice, though calm, carried a conviction that pierced like an arrow. "Your light, Lucifer, has become a shadow, trying to eclipse the Creator. Can't you see? You've placed yourself above God." Lucifer felt a deep, raw pain in his core, a wound that Michael had just opened with those words. His pride, his ambition, had been exposed, publicly naked and humiliated. In that moment, rage and shame flooded him like dark waves crashing against his heart. With a look of contempt, he tried to stand firm before Michael, but something in those words burned him from within. "You understand nothing," Lucifer retorted, trying to maintain his dignity. "Are you so blind that you can't see what we're being asked? This is humiliation. I, who was first in his glory, cannot kneel before something so inferior." His words sounded firm, but the fury and bitterness he contained distorted his voice. Michael looked at him, serene yet unyielding. His voice, though quiet, held the force of 1,000 storms. "You don't understand love, Lucifer," Michael said. "This isn't about humiliation, but love. God becomes flesh for us, and you reject him because you can't bear to be lesser. You've forgotten your place. You've forgotten that all you are is a reflection of his glory. It's not God who lowers himself. It's your pride that elevates you beyond your own being. Lucifer felt a deep, unbearable weight in his heart. It was as though Michael was showing him his own image, and what he saw wasn't beautiful. It was a shadow, full of resentment. He couldn't withstand the weight of that truth, of that love. Michael defended it so fiercely. Without a word, Lucifer turned away, distancing himself from Michael and all who watched. He retreated, his back straight, but inside an uncontainable anger burned. Alone, Lucifer wept, not tears of sorrow, but of pure rage, a growing hatred born from his wounded pride. How dare Michael? How could he challenge him, the brightest of all? Yet deep within, a faint voice reminded him that Michael was right, and this truth tormented him the most. The beginning of the rebellion. "Can't you see that God asks the impossible of us?" he whispered, his voice low yet full of conviction. "He asks us to renounce who we are, to kneel before an inferior form. Why should we, beings made of light, humble ourselves before something made of clay? Are we supposed to worship a crucified God? We, glorious beings, must kneel before that broken body, bloodied, covered in wounds, suffering beyond measure." More and more angels whispered, "Lucifer is right. God cannot ask us to do something that defies logic." Doubt crept in. What if God is not God? What if he's just a very powerful angel? What if he is merely a greater Lucifer? The seed of doubt had been planted in many angelic minds. His gaze, intense and burning, bore into his brothers, and many felt a powerful truth in his words. Lucifer didn't speak of hate, nor did he call for violence. He spoke of dignity, of the greatness of their existence, and their right to preserve it. Lucifer knew how to reach their hearts. He spoke of freedom, of independence, of becoming something beyond what they had always been. He promised them a heaven where they wouldn't have to bow to anyone, a place where their own talents and light would be recognized, without the need to subordinate themselves. "God has given us free will," he said, "so why not exercise it? Why not be who we truly are?" With each gathering, his army grew. It wasn't lesser angels who followed him, but the most beautiful, the wisest, those in whom God had invested great power and beauty. Lucifer chose them carefully, seeking out those who, like him, yearned for something more. Heaven's most radiant beings, once the crown jewels of creation, began forming the rebel army. They were creatures of such perfection that they outshone all other light. But now that light was beginning to darken with shadows. At one of these meetings, Lucifer stood before them with commanding presence. "We are the future," he proclaimed, his voice echoing like thunder. "We are the light that refuses to kneel. We won't let our essence be dimmed beneath the shadow of an inferior form. If God won't give us the place we deserve, we'll take it ourselves." His words burned with such fervor that every angel present felt a tremor in their being. He spoke with such certainty that it made them question everything they had ever known. Thus, under his leadership, Lucifer's army took shape. Each of his followers was like a fallen star. Beauty transformed into a weapon of rebellion. The angels who had once been the most loyal, the most respected, the most beloved, now rose as the first army in heaven's history. In their hearts burned ambition, pride, and the promise of a freedom that deep down was a chain forged by their own vanity. The firmament, once full of harmony and peace, now trembled with the echoes of war. In a corner of heaven, Michael rose, steadfast and determined, the small archangel who had fearlessly defied Lucifer. With his sword raised high, he cried out once more, "Who is like God?" That exclamation, simple yet powerful, awakened those who still doubted. Michael, with unmatched humility and strength, stood before Lucifer's army, ready to defend the Creator's honor. He knew his forces were outmatched, that Lucifer's followers were numerous and powerful, but he never wavered. His faith was his shield, his loyalty his weapon. Thus in heaven, the war between light and shadow reached its climax. Lucifer, the most beautiful angel, the morning star, had transformed his light into a rebellion that would forever mark the history of creation. The first battle was fought between brothers, and with each blow, each clash, the heavens shattered and the universe held its breath. The final battle erupted with a fury that shook the very foundations of heaven. On one side stood the rebel army, led by Lucifer, his splendor cloaked in shadows, his light twisted into darkness. Facing him were the faithful angels, led by Michael, the humble archangel who had risen with unwavering strength and unshakable faith and overflowing courage. Heaven, once a realm of peace and harmony, became a dazzling battlefield, a war of light against shadow, of loyalty against rebellion. The armies clashed like waves of fire and thunder. Each blow, each crossing of light swords, created flashes that lit up the heavens like shooting stars in a fierce dance. The fallen angels, once the most beautiful and powerful to grace the sky, fought with seemingly inexhaustible fury. But the faithful angels battled with a quiet determination, guided by love and loyalty to the Creator. Michael, the lowest-ranking archangel, advanced at the forefront of his brothers, shouting with a fervor that echoed throughout the universe, "Who is like God?" Michael's strength didn't lie in his rank or splendor, but in his faith. He fought not for his own glory or pride, but because he knew that goodness, light, and truth were with him. In that certainty, his strength seemed to multiply. The faithful angels felt enveloped in divine power, a protection reminding them they were not alone. The Creator was with them, and that presence gave them strength surpassing any earthly force. Lucifer, enraged, tried to push Michael back. He rose on his wings, exhaling a shadow that enveloped those who looked upon him. "I was the first. I am the true light," he shouted, but his words were empty, hollow, a dark echo of what he once had been. The light within him had become a distorted shadow, and his power, though formidable, could not eclipse the truth that Michael held like a pure flame. The battle was fierce, and the heavens themselves felt wounded. Angels who weren't fighting watched in awe and sorrow, feeling the weight of rebellion in their hearts. The peace that had once been heaven's core was shattered, and the perfect order teetered on the brink. Yet amid the destruction, hope stood firm. The faith of the loyal angels, their love for God, shone in every blow they struck and every step they took toward Lucifer and his followers. At last, the force of good prevailed. Michael's sword, raised high, uttered the battle's final words, "By God's power, fall." In that moment, darkness split asunder. The rebellion, once so fierce and violent, began to crumble. The fallen angels, a third of all heavenly hosts, were cast out, dragged like stars plummeting from the sky. Lucifer became Satan, and with him, all who had followed his ambition were hurled into the abyss. Heaven fell into a solemn silence, a hush that bore the sadness of an irreparable loss. The war had left deep scars, a wound in paradise that only love and time could heal. The faithful angels felt the weight of the battle on their souls, but they knew that light had triumphed. Truth, faith, and hope, those virtues which can never be defeated, had prevailed in this victory. Heaven remembered an eternal truth. Good always triumphs over evil, not by force, not by violence, but because goodness is the very essence of God, a light that no darkness can extinguish. Pride, hatred, and ambition may fight fiercely, but they are fleeting shadows against the purity of love and faithfulness. The battle had ended, and heaven, though wounded, remained at peace. Michael's faith, the humility of his words, "Who is like God?" now echoed in every corner of the universe, an immovable and eternal truth, a reminder that God's glory is infinite and that nothing, not even the brightest light, can surpass his love. The expulsion and Lucifer's fate after the final battle. Heaven opened to cast out the rebels. Lucifer, once the morning star, along with his fallen followers, was hurled far from the light and dragged into an abyss of darkness and desolation. In the act of expulsion, heaven itself trembled. The angels, once the most beautiful and powerful, whose light had rivaled the stars, fell like banished meteors, cast into the lower world, a realm of chaos and shadow, an eternal exile where God's glory could no longer be seen or felt. Lucifer, now transformed into Satan, felt the weight of the fall like a burning iron in his being. The total separation from God, from light and heavenly peace, was a wound deeper than any physical punishment could inflict. The underworld where he and his followers were confined wasn't yet the final hell, but a place of chaos and utter spiritual isolation, a land beyond peace and glory's reach. It was like a shattered dream, a dark reflection of heavenly order, a realm cut off from holiness. For Satan, this expulsion meant the end of his original purpose, yet in his pride and rage, his hatred morphed into a new mission. If he couldn't attain God's glory, he would destroy it wherever he found it. In this abyss of despair, his gaze turned towards creation, the material world God had promised to make. In his twisted mind, a thought took shape. If he couldn't have heaven, he would corrupt God's most precious work, humanity. The idea of seeing humans, made in God's image, dragged into darkness gave him bitter satisfaction. Humans were the ones who had stolen his place at God's throne. That love and goodness with which they were created would become the target of his hatred. His motivation was clear. If he and his fallen angels couldn't be in God's presence, then humans didn't deserve it either. This hatred and resentment transformed into a mission, a deep desire to sabotage the divine work and corrupt the purity of creation. Lucifer's expulsion and his army of fallen angels had a direct consequence on the balance of good and evil in the world. From that moment, evil began to exist, not just as an absence of goodness, but as an active and organized force. The demons, led by Satan, began to seek ways to exert their influence over the material world, to corrupt humans, to incite pride, envy, and despair, the very feelings that had led to their own downfall. God, in his love and justice, allowed this separation. The expulsion was not just a punishment, but an act of divine justice. The angels who had chosen rebellion, who had rejected God's love and holiness, could no longer dwell in his presence. God's love was always there, but his justice demanded balance. Those who had decided to reject the light could not continue to bask in it. In this act, the equilibrium between God's love and justice was perfectly manifested. Justice required separation, and love still granted the fallen ones the freedom to exist, albeit in a darkness of their own choosing. The story of Lucifer, now Satan, doesn't end with his expulsion, but rather extends into the relationship between good and evil in the world today. His fall, his hatred, his desire to corrupt humanity remain present in every temptation, in every spiritual battle that humans face. Evil seeks to infiltrate the human heart, its freedom, and its desire for greatness. But this influence is limited, and good, which comes from God, always has the final say. The battle between good and evil that began in heaven continues on earth, in the hearts of human beings. Satan and his demons seek to darken the light of every soul, but God's grace, love, and justice are always present, reminding us that although evil may be loud and defiant, good will always triumph. Lucifer's fall became the beginning of an eternal conflict, a reminder that ultimately, goodness, light, and divine love are invincible. As in heaven, on earth too, Michael's question will always resonate. Who is like God? Lucifer's influence in the world, since his expulsion, has remained a force with a singular dark purpose: to corrupt the creation he once inhabited. The Bible recounts various episodes where Satan, now a master of temptation, challenges not only mere mortals, but also key figures in the history of faith. One of the most symbolic moments is found in the New Testament, when Satan attempts to tempt Jesus in the desert. After 40 days and nights of fasting, Jesus is confronted by Satan, who offers him temptations of power, food, and glory. Satan says, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Then he takes Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple and suggests that he throw himself down, so angels will protect him and thus demonstrate his power. Finally, Satan offers Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for worship, revealing his ultimate intention to usurp the worship that belongs to God alone. Jesus' response to each temptation highlights his unwavering spiritual strength and complete trust in the Father. Jesus rejects each proposal, quoting Scripture and reaffirming the truth that power and glory belong to God alone. This episode is more than a simple confrontation. It exemplifies how faith and humility can withstand even the most alluring temptations. Jesus demonstrates that true power lies not in miracles or wealth, but in obedience and love for God. Another striking tale of temptation is the testing of Job, as seen in the book of Job. Satan appears before God with a mix of arrogance and defiance, hurling an accusation: "Does Job fear God for nothing?" In that moment, Satan not only challenges Job's faithfulness, but attempts to question the very foundation of faith itself. He suggests that Job's love for God is superficial, a loyalty bought with blessings. Satan's challenge is an affront to the nature of love and faith, implying that no one, not even the most righteous man, can remain faithful amid suffering. Job's story reveals Satan's relentless capacity to attack the core of faith, inflicting pain and despair. However, Job's response, though filled with anguish and doubt, is a powerful lesson in spiritual resilience. In his endurance, Job proves that faith is not merely a response to blessings, but a deep-rooted loyalty that persists even in the face of extreme suffering. Satan fails, and Job's unwavering faith becomes an eternal testament to resisting evil and trusting in God. Moreover, Lucifer's first major act after being cast out was in the Garden of Eden, the place where God, in his infinite love, had set the stage for human history. In that perfect garden, Lucifer saw a chance to strip innocence from the first humans, Adam and Eve, and turn them into the first victims of his rebellion against the Creator. Taking the form of a serpent, a symbol of cunning and betrayal, he approached Eve with words dripping with seduction and doubt. Did God really say, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden"? He began with a question, planting the seed of suspicion. His technique wasn't overwhelming force, but a subtle whisper that, like poison, invaded Eve's heart. Lucifer knew how to transform a simple desire into an irresistible need, how to turn doubt into action. "You will be like God, knowing good and evil." This promise sealed humanity's fate. Adam and Eve, tempted by the possibility of being more, of achieving divinity without obeying their Creator, fell, and with them, the world fell into the shadow of sin. Lucifer, with a single temptation, achieved what he had planned: to separate creation from its Creator and bring the celestial conflict into the human heart. Lucifer's influence has not vanished. His presence remains a constant source of conflict in human life. Each temptation, each moment of doubt, echoes that first choice in Eden and the challenges faced by Job and Jesus. Evil acts as an echo of that primordial rebellion. a voice trying to separate us from the source of all goodness. However, in every biblical episode and every story of resistance, we're reminded that good will always have the final word. Faith and love remain the ultimate answers to hatred and despair. The role of Lucifer in Revelation. In the Bible's final book, Revelation, Satan's ultimate fate and role in the end times are revealed. This tale, brimming with striking imagery and prophecies, presents Satan as the great dragon, humanity's and God's ultimate adversary, determined to corrupt creation until the very end. John, the author of Revelation, describes a vision of the last days, an era when evil seems to have reached its zenith, and the battle between light and darkness intensifies like never before. Revelation portrays Satan as the great dragon, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. The same Lucifer, once the morning star, has now taken the form of a fierce dragon, an entity symbolizing not only evil, but also the destructive and deceptive power he's wielded since his fall. This ancient serpent is the same one who led humanity into sin in Eden, and now, at the end of time, seeks to destroy all remaining goodness and light in the world. Revelation describes a time of tribulation, a period of catastrophes and trials, where humanity is divided between those who follow God and those who succumb to evil's seductions. In this account, Satan appears as the great deceiver, the being who, from the beginning, has sought to separate humanity from God. In the last days, he intensifies his efforts, using every tool at his disposal to carry out his mission of corruption and destruction. He is described as the accuser of our brothers and sisters, constantly trying to lead the faithful astray, sowing doubt, temptation, and despair. John's vision shows Satan facing off against Michael and the heavenly armies one last time. This epic battle is a continuation of the war that began in heaven when Lucifer was cast out. Now, in this culmination of time, the conflict reaches its fiercest point. Revelation also portrays Satan as the mastermind behind the beast and the false prophet, sinister forces that rise on earth to spread chaos and idolatry. Through them, Satan seeks to establish a kingdom that directly challenges God's authority. This counterfeit realm is a twisted imitation of the divine kingdom. Satan's attempt to be worshipped as a god culminates in the utter corruption of creation. Here, his ultimate ambition is revealed: to usurp the glory he's always craved, even through deception and tyranny. Revelation concludes with a vision of good's final triumph over evil. The light will ultimately shine, proving that God's truth, love, and justice are eternal. After the Great Tribulation and the final battle, Satan is defeated and evil's power is dismantled forever. In a strikingly symbolic image, Satan is captured and cast into the lake of burning sulfur, an eternal place of punishment that renders him powerless to reach humanity or influence creation. This ultimate act of justice seals Satan's inevitable fate, along with that of his followers, as they are condemned to an eternity completely separated from God's presence and glory. Satan's fall in Revelation represents the definitive victory of good over evil. In his love and justice, God allows evil to act only for a time, granting humanity the freedom to choose. However, at the end of time, when all has been tested and decisions have been made, evil is finally vanquished. This final destiny isn't just a consequence of Satan's actions, it is a reaffirmation of God's supreme power over all creation. In his ultimate downfall, Satan becomes the embodiment of a failed rebellion, a dimmed light that, in its ambition and hatred, could never overpower the love and goodness that sustains all life. The defeat of Satan in Revelation holds profound meaning for humanity's history and destiny. This prophecy serves as a reminder that, while evil may appear formidable, its time is limited, and its power pales in comparison to God's eternal nature. Good triumphs, not through brute strength, but because it embodies the very essence of truth, justice, and love. This final battle between good and evil symbolizes the divine promise of restoration and redemption for those who choose light over darkness. In the present day, Revelation serves as a reminder that, although Satan continues to attempt to lead humanity astray, his fate is sealed, his power is limited, and his rebellion will ultimately fail. The story of his fall and defeat in the end times reinforces the hope that good, no matter how challenged, will always prevail. Faith, hope, and perseverance are the spiritual weapons that draw us closer to God and remind us that the final victory belongs to good and that God's light will shine forever. If you've been intrigued by Lucifer's story and fall, you won't want to miss the fascinating account of the 5 prophecies in the book of Revelation. These prophecies reveal Lucifer's final fate and his role in the events that will conclude the conflict between good and evil. These prophecies explain Satan's last great act to corrupt the world. You'll witness how Lucifer's rebellion not only affected his own destiny, but became deeply intertwined with humanity's future and the ultimate triumph of divine justice. Get ready to uncover the conclusion of a tale that began with a fall and ends in ultimate revelation. Click the video on screen to watch. You won't want to miss this.